1988, I went to go visit Trevor Denman, for example, in 1990. Heard so much about him. Stayed with him for a couple of weeks in California. Commentated at Hollywood Park. Got the opportunity to go and visit Terry Spargo in Hong Kong. Got the opportunity to go to Dubai to go and see what goes on over there. Got the opportunity to call a race at Newmarket.
Jeez.
The late Sir Peter O'Sullivan was still there, and it's taken us around the world to the extent of seeing things that you wouldn't normally see.
Welcome to another edition of In the Box Seat. I'm flying solo this week because my colleague and good friend, bushy-haired friend Andrew Harrison, well, he tells me he can't afford to get to Pinetown in New Germany, but he's swanning it at the Seychelles at the moment for a week's holiday, and he's gone up to see his son. So I'm on my own today, but I've got Clyde Basel with me, who's all the way from Gauteng. Clyde, how are you?
Great, really good to be here. It's so beautiful. Sommerfeld is, what a scene. It's this whole set the scene sort of for the weekend, and how can you not love what you do when you see this, when you're in this company?
Harrison, up in at the Seychelles, can you believe it?
That's wonderful. I mean, did he know? He obviously must have found out and done. So I wanted to talk to him about a few things, and maybe...
Yes.
But I'm glad that he's away and enjoying his break.
Yeah, you'll see him, don't you worry. We're going to see a lot more of you through the champion season, and no doubt you'll see him as well. Well, Clyde, we all know he's a top quality commentator, top quality racing analyst, presenter, weighted to win. There's a list of things that he does. But to start off, Clyde, you're telling me you're celebrating, or you're going to be celebrating 35 years as a commentator, 35 years in the commentary box. You come from a racing family. It's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's can't believe time is. I started very young, so I might be 50 now, but it's almost like you think you've been around forever. Somebody thinks you're as old as 70 or 80, which at the end of the day, it feels like a lifetime, because when you start that young in the business that you love so much. 35 years. My first was in 1988.
Okay.
At the time, and it obviously came out of causes where at the time I had interest in commentating, but I didn't ever think it would lead to where it led to, and as a result, what fast-tracked the process, I guess, is that there was a plane crash, unfortunately, that my brother was involved in. And of course, my brother and I used to go to Bloemfontein every now and then, and we used to commentate. He would commentate with me, my late brother, practice in the room, that sort of stuff. And my family and my sister would encourage me, but I never took it seriously, to be honest. It was like, but then when he passed away, I felt that there was a need, for whatever reason, to keep the Basel name afloat in horse racing. My what would you call it, pedigree. My father's brother was Dudley Basel, who was a steward of the Clearwood Turf Club, and he was chairman of NatFed, who was the national federation. At that time, there was a national owners body. He was chairman, Dudley, and a lot of those would remember him. And from my mother's side, she's a Bacchus, or was a Bacchus, and their family related to the Tahinis. My father's side, the Basel, related to the Kodachis, and that's our family. So all from past trainers and previous, interest in horse racing one way or the other. So I said, there's got to be a way that I can continue, and I picked up the phone. I phoned a guy by the name of Ed Andrews.
Okay.
I was 15. And I said, I want to commentate a race. He used to run the racing clubs at the time. He was like the general secretary.
At the age of 15?
At 15, I just picked up the phone. And I got hold of him. I said, let me phone him. And he said, yes, you can. And this was in October. And by that stage, my birthday was in July. So I just turned 16.
Can I stop you for a second there?
Yes.
I read a stat somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, the youngest person in the world at the age of 16 to commentate a Group 1 race. Is that a correct stat?
Well, it was the first commentary was in October of 88, which happened to be at Newmarket, won by a horse called Opportunity Knox.
How's that? Opportunity Knox, yeah.
How's that? So that came about, and of course I was still in school, commentating in the corridors, and the teachers and to get through school.
As your mates went down the corridor,
we would make it a race, and the teachers knew, and they quickly found out. And that's how we used to get through school in those days. We used to tip the teachers, otherwise we couldn't get through. And if the horse got beat, we were in trouble. There was a red ring around our mark. So we managed to get through, and commentating then. And at those days, racing was on radio, and very quickly became sort of known in the business. And then at the time, I was guided by Craig Peters, who was a massive influence at that stage, having written him letters and asked him what I should do. And he gave me some guidance through him and Peter Duffield, who was there, Graham Hawkins, Francois Wolfart, at that particular stage. And then opportunity arose when Peter Duffield unfortunately couldn't fulfill any more obligations. He had a throat issue, a voice issue, which was sad. He was a great commentator, I thought. And I got the call to call the OK Gold Bowl, as it was then. In 1990, I was 18, and that's, I think, where the statistic applied to being the youngest to call a Group 1 event. So. And it steamrolled from there, Warren. It's just been a fantastic journey in the commentary box.
Clyde, the plane crash, a disastrous, tragic time in the racing industry. It was just a bit before my time, but obviously we've read up about it and we've heard about it. Just tragic, isn't it?
Terrible. What happened to my family, those who know my family well enough, we from a traditional Lebanese family, right? And my mom and dad were devout Catholics. And my mother dressed, there were 5 of us as children, and she dressed all her children in blue and white.
Okay.
Who happened, they're the colours of, we believe to be the colours of Our Lady, Jesus' mother, and she dedicated that to all her children for the first 2 years. And we were brought up traditionally with the Lebanese tradition in that we were homely as one could be, hospitable as one could be, respectful, and devout Catholics at the time. And when this plane went down, my mother stopped talking to God for 10 years.
Sure.
After that.
Okay.
So it was a terrible turnaround for all of us. It was, I can't tell you what it did to our family. It really, all the families were affected, and the industry was, but everybody dealt with it. And funny enough, we still haven't really overcome it, because we were so close, and we were a very close-knit family. Everybody knew everyone's business, and there was never a time where our house was empty. Those who know our family and where we lived in Robertsham in Alford Road, those will know. We had visitors, friends, family. There's a recipe for me as a parent in that. What I realized as a child, I lived in a very happy environment, and if anything, when celebrating my 50th birthday, my only knowledge I could share with the people around me was those who still have the opportunity, is if your children are brought up in a happy environment, despite what goes on in a household. We understand there are challenges in every household, whatever they may be, family, financial, doesn't matter what it is. You're faced with challenges, and that's what life's all about. But in that happy environment, it's almost part of what you expect, and what you need to do, and what you need to deal with. And I believe a recipe for a child in particular is that he looks forward to going home. He's looking forward to what his mother's made for supper.
Absolutely.
He's looking forward to being in the presence of his family. And any child that doesn't have that appeal, or that, I feel, is lacking something. And that's thank God we were brought up in that environment. And horse racing mad. My father was horse racing mad. My mother was horse racing mad. Our family were horse racing mad. They used to bet every day. Those days it was telebet, and it was dial a call. There was you couldn't watch it on telly. You used to hear it on radio. And that was it. And that's the family and environment we grew up in.
Clyde, Angie's here. She's behind the scenes. Where's Angie? She's enjoying the bit of the Durban's sun on her back there. And of course, Stephen Karam's here as well from World Sports Betting. It's one of their big days tomorrow, which we'll talk on a bit later. But married to Angie, how many years? Kids? Tell us about that.
Angie and I got married we're school friends, actually. We met each other in Robertsham Primary when we were kids. I think she was 9 and I was 11. She didn't like me at all. It took a long time to get it right, but I did eventually, and we got married. And we've been married now, we'll be 30 years this year.
Okay.
And my eldest is 29, Keith. I've got my daughter Tamir at 25, and my youngest is Keanu at 21. So, and it feels like yesterday that this has all just happened, and it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful.
You did make me laugh because you've got a great sense of humour. When obviously I've been up to Weighted to Win. Again, we'll talk about Weighted to Win just now. And the makeup goes on and the whole set. And I said, "This."
Now you've seen the raw deal.
I said, "The podcast is no makeup. We chilled at the Summerfeld Clubhouse. It's just a lovely conversation that we share with the racing people." And you clocked across to your good lady and you said, "No makeup. I still look all right. You'd take me out again." That was a great chef. Would you take me out again? Yeah. She nodded. Thankfully.
just as well.
Let's move along then and talk about two other parts of your life. See how they run, IGN, all TV work, and those were also great and interesting times of your life.
It's interesting all that, because I think what comes
Super
with
track,
commentating...
track.
Yes, when you start in the commentary box, and unfortunately, and I say this because I think it is something that perhaps needed attention at the time and maybe still does. Commentating is not financially viable. It's not in South Africa. Reason being, you're limited in terms of the number of race meetings that you can commentate at. You're limited in terms of the number of opportunities race meetings you can call at. And so you're therefore forced at the age to, which is in a way perhaps an opportunity to learn other trades of the industry, to present or to work. I worked at Computer Form. I started with Alec Hogg on a publication called Racing Digest. Didn't get paid for the first 2 years, he will remember. But I had to find work, and I did, and went out after that. And working in those establishments led me to then working on a show called See How They Run, which was run by the late Clive and Mandy Parnell. Graham Hawkins said to me, "I've had enough of it, you need to take this over." It was on Botswana TV in those days. It was Bob TV, and then they managed to grow that into an SABC show, and it was on every Friday and Saturday night, and there were a whole lot of us that got involved. And so See How They Run was very popular in those days because horse racing was the in thing, and everybody watched the Friday night preview, and they watched, funny enough, the Saturday night review as to what happened. So it was extremely popular. And from there, I was fortunate enough to be offered a seat at IGN in terms of presenting, which was International Gaming Network, which was DSTV, ultimately MultiChoice. And then the operators at the time bought that. Wasn't theirs, it didn't belong to them. They owned it independently. Okay. And then I think it was Derek Weed, the late Derek Weed, who made the call and said, "I think we need to take this over and run it as our own channel." And they adopted the name, if I recall correctly, Super Track.
Yeah.
And then it became Teletrack, and so it's evolved. And that's where my career led to from 1988. I went to go visit Trevor Denman, for example, in 1990. Heard so much about him. Stayed with him for a couple of weeks in California. Commentated at Hollywood Park. Got the opportunity to go and visit Terry Spargo in Hong Kong. Got the opportunity to go to Dubai to go and see what goes on over there. Got the opportunity to call a race at Newmarket. Jeez. The late Sir Peter O'Sullivan was still there. And you know, it's taken us around the world to the extent of seeing things that you wouldn't normally see, you know. So we've been on a fantastic journey, engaged with so many wonderful people in the business, and I love it.
You then did a lot of administration work, 2007, 2009. You obviously worked for the operator Pumalela. Then there was your change of role, which you tell me was about 2015. Rion resigned 2018. Obviously, I'm just skimming over those events just to get you going. But yeah, that was also an integral part of your life, but also a tough part. It
was, you know, I jumped out of the commentary box and presenting, and in the career that we're in today, to step into an administrative role. The Racing Association at the time were looking for a general manager. In 2007, I stepped into that role. Robin Bruss was the guy who actually phoned me and said, "Did you know the advertising?" With all due respect, I didn't even know the RA existed. Not for anything. I wasn't particularly interested in anything else other than what we were doing.
Sure.
And when he said, "Don't you want to apply?" I did. And I don't know how many applicants there were, but I got a call 2-3 weeks later to say, "You've got the job. We would like to engage you." Chris Van Niekerk was chairman at the time. He did. And he engaged me, and we stepped into that role for a couple of years, and then the operator came across. We changed a lot at the time at the RA. These little silks that you see on your badge come from when we sat around that table. Small little things like that, which today may mean nothing, but then was such a big deal. I even got a letter from Mrs. O, the late Mrs. O, to say, what a wonderful idea, well done,
Yes.
on that sort of initiative. So, and we upgraded the elevation room, and we upgraded the racing experience to, at the time, make sure that people enjoyed what they did. And then I think the operator took notice and then approached me, Rion, and he said, come and join our team. And I had a sales department. Stephen was obviously head of that sales department. I asked him to run with that. And our very first sale was Pigs Peak Casino, which we sold to night racing within our first 3 months, actually.
Got one of those little pigs.
Yes, do you remember that?
Fluffy pig.
Correct.
Yeah, we got one of those.
So we got one of those. We had a very good deal there. And then when that sort of closed, I said to here's the deal, it's closed. Where's the events and hospitality and marketing department now to take this forward? And there wasn't. Well, when I say there wasn't an established one. And he said, then you need to run with that. And I did. And I did so for up until about 2015. And then Patrick Davis had left the country as racing executive. He went overseas. And I was asked to step into that particular role, but on the condition that I'm no longer in charge of sales and on-course marketing and all that sort of stuff. So that had nothing to do with me anymore. And I fulfilled that role, a very tough role, not easy. That's very hard, to keep racing streamlined and the business afloat as best you can when you know stakeholders are under all sorts of pressure. Never an easy role, and good luck to whoever has those roles today, because they're tough. But I thoroughly enjoyed doing what I did it with passion, commitment, love. I then stepped out of the executive role altogether. I wasn't part of Exco from the day that discussion took place. And I then continued until the business dissipated, and we were then furloughed. Never had a job after March or April 2020. It completely crashed. We were told, you're no longer, you're not part of our business, as in we can't afford to pay you people anymore. And when I was one of many that lost that position, and we got tours of I think 6,000 or 7,000 a month. And when it all crumbled, there were so many stories and perceptions about so many things that people get out and talk about, and it's quite interesting because you talk about a topic of conversation where there are, it's probably worth speaking about, to say how much people were paid and what their salaries were and what they earned, when at the end of the day they were numbers that were ultimately inflated by share options that nobody could sell.
Yes.
So you assume to have been earning 6 or 7 million as a result of being awarded shares, which you never sold. You couldn't get them. You couldn't sell them. You weren't allowed to sell them, or whatever the case may be, and I didn't. And lost all that, and no, my world completely crashed. In August of 2020, Warren, after being furloughed, I signed a contract with, at the time, the operator that was still going, was to continue running hospitality and events and sponsorships. I signed the contract in August of 2020, and then it was for half as to what we earned previously. I accepted it. I was in a position now to accept. We can't say no. And I was under the impression that Mod was taking over, and continued on that basis. And in the last week of the voluntary package, there was a final deadline, which was, if I recall correctly, Wednesday, the 27th of August. I can't remember exactly, but you can check on 2020 whenever that Wednesday was, where you had to take the voluntary package or commit and stay.
Yes.
It wasn't, I think, a couple of days before where there was a counter offer. At the time, MOD had made, the offer. There were conditions in place, and everything was on the table, and we were up and running. And then there was a counter offer from another bidder, and I thought if that was going to be the case, then if it's the same person who said to me, "You're not part of my team," who's behind the offer, then how could I stay?
Correct.
Knowing that they've offered approximately, and I may have my facts wrong, approximately 200 million more. And then I said to myself, well then, what chance have you got?
Yes, yeah.
I then asked my events team to contact the company, the business practitioner, to ask if he would delay the process of the voluntary package to after the vote, because then one could decide.
Just to make a decision, absolutely.
And there was no response, and when I engaged HR about it, they said to me they didn't think that the one had anything to do with the other. So I then decided I can't. How can I take that risk? Because when you're going to be stepping into a new world with the environment that you were sort of chased away from. And I said, no, I don't want. I'd rather not. And I voluntarily walked away.
Okay.
And that's where my world ended.
Yeah,
because on the Monday the creditors voted mod.
Okay.
And I was like, I couldn't figure it out, but touch wood, it all worked out for the best today. But it took me a long time to recover. In fact, I haven't completely recovered from that.
But when racing has been your life and is your life and is your everything, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. All of us, I mean, we wake up in the morning, we reach for the computer form, we turn the TV on, it's on to the racing, we have a bet, and you and there's so many others that have been so many years that way. Yeah, it's when you realise that now it might not be part of your life, as you said, absolutely shatters you.
And it's your family, and I couldn't cope with it. My family didn't accept it. I mean, they said to me, it's happened for the best, and
yes.
when they try and console you.
Yeah.
But I couldn't accept it. How do you give up 30 years or 35 years of what you've been so passionate about? That's all I knew and all I lived with.
Yeah.
We, in our events team, we rolled with the Prawn Festival, which was so popular. We came up with the Gins and Roses Festival. We came up with the Intercontinental Village concept. We came up with the beer and the Rugby World Cup beer and burger festival. There were so many festivals that ran that were so successful, that we were so passionate and committed to, that I couldn't believe that world had is that it?
Yeah.
And you're commentating and whatever is that the end? I refused to accept it.
You refused to.
And I pressed on.
The fact that you say you refused to accept it, you pressed on, etc. We fast forward the clock a little. Wonderful. How did Waited to Win come about? I mean, because now you're back, which is such a wonderful thing. I mean, you're calling, you're commentating, you're presenting. We're loving every second of it. Waited to Win. I mean, I think everybody in racing hangs on to. I'm glad that Andrew Harrison is not here, because you were going to have a go at him, because he said to me the other day,
we keep waiting to win.
Waiting to win. He obviously doesn't watch too many programs.
He might be right.
No, he's not right at all, because we're winning a lot with Waited to Win. But be that as it may, how did that so now you're back, you're in the mix again, which is fantastic.
My colleagues, some also in a similar role to me, left the company voluntarily. Two also walked away after hearing what they heard, and so they started their show, and I found that there may be an opportunity for a second show, and then contacted Daryl Marie and Darren Burrows. Darren Burrows I never met in my life.
Still to this day?
I met him once.
Oh, you've met him. Okay, now you've met him once.
But prior, I didn't meet him, didn't know, and we said, listen, why don't we take a chance and put this up on YouTube, and you're not going to get remunerated for it, but maybe there's a way we can get around it. And see if we're able to compete, and it didn't take us too long to become to get the following that we managed to.
Yes.
That we managed to, and we used it on weekends only. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday show as we started, and the views were through the roof on YouTube. We were quite amazed actually, and we were in demand, so it was great. Then I approached 4Racing TV and said, listen, here's a concept. Would you have a look at it? And the management at the time did. They liked what they saw. They liked the numbers. They saw the number of views. They looked at there were a number of factors that they took into consideration, and we were appointed. And thank God it kept us sane, because
I think it works very well the way they've incorporated into the race day production. Obviously they play out the recorded slot of that race, and then they go on to the live course feed, etc. I think it works very, very well, and it's a product that I think you all can be very proud of.
Thank you.
It's a lovely. How did you get the name Waited to Win? I mean,
Daryl Marie was the guy who came up with the name.
Okay.
He said to me, "Why don't we call it Waited to Win?" So I said, "Oh, we'll call it whatever you
passionate man, Daryl.
Whatever, lovely guy. But so they're both committed.
And Darren, absolutely,
study their form every day, and so we found ourselves in a situation, Warren, we weren't. Remember, when the package came, your package can only last so long, right?
Sure.
That's life. So something had to come and had to give. I was forced to use my retirement package, because what else do you do in a situation like that when you're out of work for that long? And then I've had to restart from the very, very beginning, all over again. And I guess it's a lesson in life that you learn, who you can and who you can't trust, and how much you should give and how much you shouldn't. Very passionate at the end of the day, but I guess the lesson that came out of that whole episode was it might not be there forever.
Yeah.
It may just pass.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you can assume or expect anything to be guaranteed in life. It's not.
Yeah.
I never ever thought that I'd be sitting in this situation today, talking to you about something that happened to me in the past. And it wasn't only me.
Yes.
There were many, thousands of people that were affected by this. Unfortunate incident that happened. This is the second time it happened. Remember, it happened in 1997 when they corporatized horse racing. There were a lot of job losses then. Horse racing had to sort of merge and come together. And it happened again in 2020.
Yeah.
Whether the two have anything to do with each other, you can work it out for yourselves. But at the end of the day, God's great.
Yeah.
Back where we're at, doing Weighted to Win with 4 Racing TV, and pray that the game can find a formula to sustain itself.
Yes.
Because I've said it before, the game was able to sustain itself for a while, and then naturally with other interests in other gaming, and with the tote being diluted like it was, for multiple reasons, natural collapse was abound. And I'm hoping there are solutions. There's some very interesting people that are around and about and in control today. I've been very fortunate that I've been in a company of some very bright people for many years.
Yes.
Having the opportunity to have met as many people as I have, sitting in boardrooms with people that have had very, very successful businesses on their own. And you're very fortunate to find yourself in situations like that. And I have to say, in terms of where you find yourself now, with those that are running with it at the moment, bright, intelligent, forward-looking, thinking people, and we have hope.
We certainly do have hope. What I wanted to ask you about Weighted to Win with regards to criticism. Now, I've had many a conversation with Graham Hawkins and the like, because sometimes everyone's different. You take things very personally, but how do you deal with, I'm talking about criticism. Oh, I listened to Clyde Basel, he tipped Dance's daughter, got beat, what does he know? How do you handle that? Or do you just water off a duck's back? Or how do you handle criticism?
We're bounced back the next day. And Sean Terry told me one day, the only way you do your talking in the profession that he's in is in the winner's enclosure.
Okay.
So that's, you're going to get they're going to criticize.
Sure.
But you bounce back by finding form again. And often on the show we'll say one or two things. We'll have a go.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Whoever you are. We heard what you said, just by the way. I used to say to Daryl and Darren often on the show that if you're not the topic of conversation at someone's coffee the next morning, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've been the topic of conversation for a long time with many cups of coffee, which, listen, at the end of the day, if that's what it needs to be, then that's what it needs to be.
Tell me about that one commentary. You swallowed a fly.
Yes.
I remember it, but I need you to freshen up my memory and the viewers.
Yes.
But tell us about that.
There were two incidents, Warren, in my days. One was, there was a horsefly sitting on those days we used to have the comms and the mic here. And there was a horsefly.
So rather a large one, not one of those naughty little one that's flying around here.
No, correct. It was a proper horsefly sitting, and the more I was blowing into the mic to get him off or wave, he wouldn't, he just sat there. Anyway, the race ran and I'm going, and as they turned for home, I inhaled, and as I inhaled, he decided to go into my So I kept him in there for as long as I could. There was nothing I could do. Get past the race, and then did my best. There was a friend of mine sitting who watched the whole thing, and we managed to get the race through, choking on the fly.
But I think you did say, I remember you said, I've choked on, I'm choking on
swallowed
a
the fly, and the favourite. And then at the Vaal, we've got these yellow jackets, they call them yellow jackets, I think, wasps, nested, just outside the commentary box, right? And I'm dead scared of any sort of thing like that. So the commentary's going and we're busy with it now, and this thing came into the box with 400 to go. Thank God I was 100 kilos lighter in those days. But watching the races, here's this flying above me, and then on the TV set, I managed to get off my chair, lie on the floor, watching the TV while this yellow jacket's flying. It's doing its thing above me, and I'm commentating the race while that's going on.
And you're on the floor.
And I'm on the floor like this, watching the race, calling it like that, and thank goodness it happened to fly out. So. But I've had very good memories of commentating some very good horses.
I can imagine, Clyde.
I was so lucky to call Empress Club. She was unbelievable. She really was unbelievable. She had a turn of foot like... Some people say to me, no, she was a decent looking. I didn't think she was. I thought she was fair to moderate looking, to be honest. But she just had an enormous engine and turned it on brilliantly. And I was lucky enough to commentate Horse Chestnut in his derby when he left the country, and watched him win. So, and there've been some very good ones since.
Absolutely,
make no mistake.
Those are the two that stick out. I would surely.
It was at that time when I was commentating at my peak, and those two horses were part of my career, and I was very lucky to be associated with them.
If I gave you this book now for Hollywood Bets Gravel for Saturday, I said, right, here's the book. How long would you need to skim through and maybe it's not your province that you've focused in, but how long do you need to prep? I mean, could you call this race meeting now?
I struggle with it, to be quite honest.
Okay.
It's 35 years later. If you're not doing it as frequently as you would normally do anything in life, it becomes harder and harder. So I would need a good few days to prepare.
Okay,
if they said tomorrow morning, Craig or Sheldon can't do you better go up and do all 10.
You'd need a bit of pressure.
Sweat a storm.
Okay.
But if you were doing it every single day, it would be like water off a duck's back, as it was back in the day.
Correct.
But now we get less and less because there are more of us, and a lot of talent coming through, which is good to see. And it's a challenging career. The thing about commentating, which some may not realize, is you actually go into a complete trance. Don't let any commentator tell you any differently. When they switch that microphone on, they don't know what's going on around them. They are so focused and concentrating on, if they're looking through the binocs or if they're on the telly, so zoned in that you can miss incidents in races and whatever else is going on around you. Something might go wrong, you don't know. But you're so in another world in that when you switch the mic off, if you don't see the slow-mo, you forgot what won.
Okay.
That's the world that you're in.
Jeez, that's interesting.
It takes you completely, you won't believe it. You've just called whatever's won it, you've just switched off, and you hit a blank. It's like that concentration just collapses.
That's
and the slow-mo comes back up to refresh your memory as to what just took place. And I think that happens to me. I believe it happens to all of us.
Sure, that's very interesting.
Trevor Denman taught me one thing, is that any commentator who said he hasn't made a mistake, one of two things: he's either lying to you, or he just hasn't called enough races.
But it's so true, Clyde, and where it does irk me a little. It's live television. You talk about the fly. I had about 8-10 months ago, I was doing a post-race interview, and for whatever reason, I started to cough. And I think a speck of dust or something had obviously, as I inhaled, it obviously got into the back of my throat, and I couldn't carry on, and I just sort of signaled to the camera guy to bring some water, and it was absolutely the worst experience of my life and the worst interview of my life. But we're humans, we're not robots standing there.
Sure.
If you tip a scratched horse, it happens to all of us, but it shouldn't really happen. That's a little unforgivable. But if you call a colt to filly or vice versa, or I've often said Dennis Dreyer instead of Dennis Bosch, you can make those little errors.
Sure, it happens.
And it does irritate me a little where people sort of throw the stones quickly, because we're humans, and it's not.
What can be forgotten sometimes is that you're in the betting industry. You're in the betting environment at the end of the day. And, some don't bet, but a lot of people, majority do.
Do bet, yeah.
And it's like, I can give you an example of the casino. The croupier's got nothing to do with the
Yeah,
result of what comes out of
and
blackjack or with the result of what ball number comes up in roulette. They've got nothing to do with it at all.
Shame.
But yet they get, they take the abuse and they have to. And I guess, listen, in the environment that we're in, I suppose we just have to stand up to it. The thing with with commentating, if I may, is that it's the peak of focus from a race perspective, in that you've heard the preview, which if you do make a mistake in the preview, perhaps it's accepted. And you've heard the review, and if you do make a mistake, perhaps it's accepted. When you're in a commentary and there's 400 meters to go, and you happen to, for whatever reason, lose concentration, in other words, you hit a blank and you have no idea who's in front, you are completely lost. Thank God, touch wood, it hasn't happened to me, but I've managed to find my way out of it, where to eventually find out who that horse is. But if it happens, it's happened. You lose constant, you don't know who the guy is, you have no idea, you've studied the race back to front, but for the life of you, you just don't know who the horse is. And it can happen. And that sort of thing will go on for days in the press. Or the post-race analysis from forums and people having, what was the guy, how could he not, why didn't, it's almost,
you'd have to, when you call, you'd have to, if you had to be able to say, the horse with the red cap's in front. Or
I'll let you know who won it in a slow-mo. But with technology today, you're fortunate enough that you've got a slow-mo that you can go to. You've got your producer in your earpiece. If you need to be reminded, you've got the judge on the radio, whatever the case may be. So there are ways and means of, after the race, of making up for that.
Which hopefully will never come our way.
Do you prefer commentating or presenting? A stupid question,
commentating, I love commentating. I absolutely love commentating. I love presenting. I love hospitality. I enjoy people. That's my game.
Well, and your family also have got Angie's involved with the nightclub business and entertainment.
We've got a restaurant, We've got a restaurant in Cape Town and in Johannesburg, in Parkhurst. And we run that through the family. And
what's it called, Clyde?
It's called The Station.
Okay.
The Station on Bree and The Station in Parkhurst. So interesting Mediterranean, and yes, there's some music later and thing, and it's nice. People who come there.
Hopefully, when I'm in Joburg next time, I'd like to come to The Station. Yeah, absolutely.
You're more than welcome to do it. It's a very nice.
There's big racing happening, and I know that Stephen Karam is here with you, and he's part of World Sports Betting. We're going to have a lovely conversation with him at the races tomorrow, and of course we thank World Sports Betting for their sponsorship. It's the World Sports Betting Guineas, a Group 2, the Fillies Guineas, another Group 2, and the Independent on Saturday at Drill Hall Stakes. Champion season, lovely that province to province gets their champion season, and it's just been fantastic. And now the spotlight is on us here in KwaZulu-Natal. 3 fabulous races, the Drill Hall Stakes, Desert Miracle, Al Mutana, William Robertson, some good racing, Fillies Guineas, of course, Golden Hostess. Shantastic is the exciting one for me. I'm quite upbeat about Shantastic. I've gone for 2 horses in the Fillies Guineas and the Guineas that are a little, the focus is on Charles Dickens and Cousin Casey. I quite like Mike de Kock's horse,
Dave
the King. I like Shantastic. Not good things, but we just set for some top quality racing.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you can't beat May, June, July. It's it's when everybody comes together ultimately, and they bump. The 3 provinces come in, and the best horses ultimately compete and win. Saturday, looking forward to it. I'll be with Stephen and World Sports Betting on the weekend to join them and watch it. And I think Desert Miracle's come well again.
Yes.
I think obviously Charles Dickens, he's just he seems super, super good. Hopefully by the time this is aired, he's won already.
Yes.
Because if he doesn't win this, then I'm not sure, then it becomes really worrying, because he should win it.
Yes.
Even if he's only 70% ready. And maybe you're right about Shantastic. I don't know. They've got to have.
She's always just intrigued me from when she started her career. And anyway, we'll just see how it goes. And Dean Canamat tells me she's in good order. So it's going to be interesting. What is your favourite bet? I mean, we all like to bet. Do you go through the menu like most of us, or
been through the menu?
Yes.
I'm still chasing pick sixes for my sins.
Okay.
Can you believe it? But yeah, it's that big pool. It's the big prize.
Yes.
And that's ultimately what you want to win.
You don't have to share it with us if you don't want to, but often people say to me, what is the biggest amount of money that, people get the perception, you get big punters, small punters, 10 rand players, and any player is a good player. I've got friends that play 2 rand swingers, and they have just as, in fact, better fun than I do, because when they get beat, they're only losing 2 rand a pop.
Yeah.
But what have you had a big win? I mean, if you're talking about the big pick sixes, because they asked me that question. My biggest win in horse racing has only been about 18k. And that's a fabulous win, but some people have won millions, and I've never fitted in.
I've never won that kind of money, that big prizes. Never been there. I've tipped it.
Yes.
We used to have those tipping lines in the old day, and I tipped the one ticket.
Okay.
One pig ticket paid 800,000. Took in the 90s, but of course I never took it. But somebody did and phoned and said thank you very much. But I've never won that kind of money ever.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
With the position that we're in now at 4 Racing TV, watching racing more frequently, with Weighted to Win, and being there every day watching the channel, it's like you can't not expect not to have a bet whilst you're busy watching this horse go to the gate and say, how on earth is that going to lose?
Yes.
And that's how often form's one thing, but I do believe very much in trying to get the producers in studio and in the OB van on course to focus more on the horse than anything else. I'll be watching a lot of UK racing lately, and what I'm finding is they zoom straight in on the jockey's face, for example.
Yes.
Close up, and that gives nothing away for me.
Sure.
It's the horse that matters. Is that horse sweating? How's he moving? I believe punters want to see more of the horse than they do anything else, to be honest. And it needs to be information.
Yes.
Feed as much info as you can, and let the punter at the end of the day decide. Okay, I've now got the full menu. I know exactly how this is going to play out, and they can choose what they want to do and how they want to play it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help to be watching every single race and not expecting to have a flutter. Ask World Sports Betting; they'll tell you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Clyde. It's people say, well, how long is the podcast? And I say, well, normally about an hour, and they say an hour. Well, we've already been going on to an hour, and
that's lovely. But thank you very much for having us.
No, it's been absolutely fantastic, and thank you for having me at Weighted to Win.
Well, no, it's always a pleasure, and
we'll see you at the races, of course, tomorrow. Yes, it's fantastic, and there's plenty of racing, ladies and gentlemen. I also just want to touch on. Tawanda's going to have to assist me here, because talk about bets. There was. Let me get it on my phone. There was. How's this story, Clyde?
Tell us.
How's this story? I'm going to read it to you. I just want to find it on my phone here. There we go. Soccer bets. Soccer betting. Score 6, score 10. And of course, there's Card Call. We're sponsored by Tab Gold. We thank them for their sponsorship. But a lucky punter took a 2 rand ticket, a soccer 10 bet. 2 rand. He invested $2, collected 393,000 for 2 rand.
Goodness me.
Then there was another punter who spent 2 rand as well, and he collected 410,000. And then there was an 8 rand punter who collected 315,000, all on soccer 10 bets. I mean, how fabulous is that? That's life-changing money.
Life-changing stuff. That should be in the news front page every single day for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, so there we go. So well done to them. That was a fabulous advertisement. Thanks to Card Call Tab Gold. And of course to our sponsors, World Sports Betting, who are going to be with us at Hollywood Bets Greyville tomorrow. And the first race, ladies and gentlemen, is off very early at 11:10. It's the 400-meter dash, the World Sports Betting 400-meter dash. We've got a 10-race card all the way until 25 to 5. Tons of racing action. Alistair Cohen's flying in to join us and be part of the presenting team, which is fantastic. It'll be myself, Dees Dynant, and Alistair Cohen. And there is a fourth person. The name escapes me right now, but we'll be at Hollywood Bets Greyville tomorrow for the World Sports Betting Fillies, Guineas, and the World Sports Betting Guineas. Get there. We promise you it's going to be entertainment like you can't believe. It's going to be a fantastic day's racing. Clyde, lovely to have you and Angie here, and of course Stephen. Stephen is not one for the camera. The first thing he did when he came to this gorgeous Summerfeld clubhouse, he had to attend to his breakfast. Now he's happy. You hear that?
He loves his breakfast.
He's much calmer.
Absolutely. He's settled now. He's going to have a pleasurable weekend.
That's a wrap from all of us. Clyde Basel, commentator, racing analyst, racing man, Weighted to Win. He's just racing in love with racing, as we all are. And we wish you all the very best. Please be safe. And as always, we'll see you from the number 1 box. Thank Thank you for watching this week's episode of In the Box Seat podcast right until the very end. And we hope that you enjoyed it, because we certainly did. If you missed last week's podcast, In the Box Seat podcast with Andrew and myself, please go and watch it here. And last week's episode will be right there for you to go and enjoy and watch, as we know you will certainly enjoy In the Box Seat podcast from last week.